Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I have a really good one for you. Today we are looking at the first trail shoe ever from Mount DeCoste. Now of course the whole company Mount DeCoste has been around for a couple of years now. You are probably familiar with the R1, the S1, and now the P1. So the R1 is kind of like their race model, the S1 is their daily trainer, and the P1 is their stability model. Now we have the Mount DeCoste T1. This is their trail shoe. Let's get into it. First of all, I do just want to say thanks to Mount DeCoste. They were good enough to send me this pair of the T1 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you're going to be able to pick up your own pair of the Mount DeCoste T1 for $180. And of course, I will place a link in the show notes below in case you want to pick up a pair for yourself. So what do you think? Just from looking at it on camera right now, does this shoe seem rather simple to you? I think maybe on the surface it looks simple, but there is a lot of great stuff that's going on with the Mount DeCoste T1. I know $180 is quite expensive, but you're getting a lot. And this is a shoe that I feel that I could go out and run on and race on pretty much any surface. I mean, not roads, I mean any trail surface. So as far as stack height goes, the Mount DeCoste T1 has 36 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for a 4mm drop. The Mount DeCoste claims that in a US men's size 9, the T1 will tip the scale at 9 ounces even or 255 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it would tip the scale at 11 ounces even or 312 grams. So my friends, maybe if you have tiny little feet, you're probably thinking 312 grams seems pretty heavy. It's not. That is a light shoe for me, and that translates to having fun on the trails very well. So let's get started at the top as we do and work our way down. And look at this heel collar. Yeah, lots of padding, but obviously not too much. I think Mount DeCoste has really nailed this. There's just a good amount of padding. It's definitely biased towards the top, so when your heel sits in, it does feel like the shoe is kind of wrapping around and hugging the top of your ankle. Heel counter is nice and rigid. I didn't experience any heel slip in the T1 at all, and the upper is really fantastic. It's a woven upper, and it's woven with aramid fibers. Now, aramid fibers, according to Mount DeCoste, are 5 times stronger than steel. So not only do we have a very light and breathable upper, it's going to be very strong too. Now, of course, I really didn't test that strength in any meaningful way. I was just running in these. I'm going to take their word for it with the strength, and since I have been testing it, I haven't had any tears in the upper, so I suppose that's a good thing. But the upper is breathable and it is light. In fact, I can see the light shining through the shoe, and I think if you were going to get your feet wet, this shoe is going to drain very well. Now, as far as the overlays go, yeah, we've got a good amount of coverage coming around this toe bumper. We've got a reinforced bit right where your big toe would be in case you go ahead and kick any rocks. You are going to have that protection right here with a T1. You have the reinforcement coming along the eyelet chain, and then there is just more reinforcement just around the heel area. It seems like a nice implementation of overlays without making it look too busy. I'm really liking the styling of this shoe. Now, maybe the woven upper with the aramid fibers is proprietary to Mount DeCoste, but if it is, I don't know. It does look like a regular kind of matrix-ish upper. The first thing that is really special about the T1 is this lacing system, and Mount DeCoste is using their tuned fit lacing system, and basically it's 2 for 1. Just like on the Mount DeCoste R1 where we have regular laces on the top and then we have kind of speed laces on the bottom, the Mount DeCoste T1 has 2 speed laces, so you can control the lockdown of your midfoot and your forefoot. As you can see, they are speed laces, so all you are going to do is just cinch on that and you are going to tighten it down very quickly. Now, the best part about having the speed laces and the tune fit is that you can really adjust the fit of the shoe on the fly. So let's say, for example, you wanted a little bit more room in your forefoot while you're climbing up a hill. It's very easy to just loosen that bottom part of the tune fit lacing, and then when it comes time to bomb the descents, you just yank on this to tighten it all down. I think it's a really good implementation of lacing, and I love the idea behind it. However, I haven't really used it in practice. It seems like a good idea on paper because whenever I put my foot into, well, the R1 before this and now the T1, I tighten the laces as I want them to be, and I've left them that way for the whole run. But I think it is one of these things that it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And you can see on the front we do have a little lace garage which is going to put in the tops of the laces and just give them a little home while you're out on the trail. Tongue on the T1 is very thin. Mount DeCoste is calling it an anti-siphon tongue, so it's going to repel water and it's going to dry very quickly. Now, the tongue on the T1 is gusseted, and I didn't experience any tongue migration on this shoe. It seems like when I get a good lockdown, it's extremely good. My foot isn't going anywhere and the whole shoe just feels part of my foot, which I think is probably how it's supposed to be. Now, I did find the toe box on the T1 quite roomy. Now, generally speaking, I do have narrow feet, but I had plenty of room in the toe box of the T1, and I think it would definitely work for people with wider feet than me. Not sure how well that translates just looking bird's eye view on camera, but it is a fairly wide toe box. So let's come down to the midsole. Now, Mount Coast is using their proprietary Lightcell midsole foam, and that is the same midsole foam that they've put in the R1. And basically, it's a supercritical PIBA hybrid. Now, Mount Coast says that the Lightcell midsole foam is 50% lighter than PIBA and has 45% higher energy return. And I've got to say, the Lightcell midsole foam has stood the test of time. I have put a lot of miles in my R1s, including a 50-kilometer race, and they still stand up very well. So I've really got no complaints over the Lightcell midsole foam in the T1 either. Now, if we come down to the outsole, yeah, the upper is all well and good. There's a lot that goes into it. It's exciting to look at, kind of touch and pull on everything. But if we come down to the outsole, this is what is going to make you stick to the trail. Now, the T1 is using a Vibram Mega Grip with light base outsole, and these look like 4mm lugs to me. And if you just look at the lug pattern, obviously they're facing forward on the forefoot and they're facing towards the reverse on the heel. And that is to give you grip when you're using your forefoot when you're climbing, and then to give you some braking power when you're descending. You know, when you're on your heels going down the hill. Now, the Vibram light base doesn't cover the entire midsole foam. It's difficult to see on my pair because the Lightcell midsole foam is black and the light base is also black, but we do have some exposed midsole foam just up on the forefoot and on the heel. And I didn't experience anything negative with that exposed midsole foam. I was just a little surprised that they actually didn't cover the whole bottom in light base, but again, I'm sure it's probably just a weight savings thing. And the T1 is, I mean, it's fairly flexible. I think it's just that light base that is giving it a nice rigid feel. Now, in my testing of the T1, I didn't run on anything really technical. I mean, I'm not bouldering, I'm not running in a mountainous area, but I did take it off-road with lots of little stones and sand and mud, and it was a lot of fun testing. And in those conditions, I think the T1 excelled beautifully. In fact, there's really nothing about the shoe that makes me think that it wouldn't excel on any mountainous condition, on any trails. These lugs are big enough to deal with a lot of mud if you had to run in that situation. But I do think that if you were running on very rocky terrain, I think maybe this exposed midsole foam could be a problem. Now, of course, I didn't experience that problem, and I'm sure Mount Coast has done just all their testing to make sure it isn't a problem. But I'm just thinking about like jumping from rock to rock and maybe landing in the middle. I'm just wondering if I land repeatedly on this exposed midsole foam, am I going to feel the rock kind of coming through the shoe? There is no rock plate in the T1. Now, a lot of times when you have this Vibram light base outsole, a rock plate really isn't that necessary, but there is that exposed midsole foam, and I am seeing a little bit of creasing. I don't think that's going to actually affect anything as far as the life of the shoe goes, and I would expect the life of the T1 to be average to above average. It is apparently, and actually in effect, a very well-made shoe. So it is summertime, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, and when it's summertime, we get out on the trails more. We do a little more exploration. And if you are going to be doing any trail running this summer, I think the Mount Coast T1 is definitely worth a look. For $180, I think you're getting a good bang for your buck. It's a very capable trail shoe, and I'm looking forward to getting this shoe dirty again and again. By the way, after my last run on the trails in the T1, I did have to give this shoe a very thorough bath before bringing it back into the house. It was absolutely caked in sand and mud. It was fun to see. But guys, now I want to hear from you. Have you run in any Mount Coast shoes? Are you thinking of picking up a pair of the Mount Coast T1? Drop a comment and let me know. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Mount Coast T1. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.